Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, Chapter 3, and Text 24. So without further ado, we'll start the class right now. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Gopi Janavallabha Girivadadari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavarabha Girvadadari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya. Astottara Satasya Maharaj Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya. Astottara Satasya Maharaj Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Charja Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Siva Shari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय, सामवेद भक्त विन्न की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Krishna Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Krishnaya, Bhutale Srimadi Bhakti Tirtha Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Sitamana Prabhupada Siddhanta Sri Gaura Karma Shakti Bhakti. Narayana Namaskritya Narunchevam Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashtaprayeswa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavato Tamastuke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Jai. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 24. Tadasvasaram hidayam vatedam yad grihya mane harinama tiye navikriyetata yada vikaru netre jalam gatra huheshu harsha. Tadasvasaram hidayam vatedam Yadgrihya mane harinamatiye navikritata yada vikaro nitre jalam gata ruheshu harsha Parashvasaram hridayam batedam Yadgrihya mane harinamatiye navikriyetata yada vikaro Nite Jalam Gatra Ruheshu Hasha. Hare Krishna. Okay. We do word for word. Tat, that. Ashma Saram is steel framed. Hridayam, heart. Vata idam, certainly that. Yat, which. Grihyamane, in spite of chanting. Harinama, the holy name of the Lord. Yea, by concentration of the mind. Na does not. Vikriyeta, change. Ata, thus. Yada, when. Vikara, reaction. Netre, in the eyes. Jalam, tears. Gata ruheshu, at the pores. Harsha, eruptions of ecstasy. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Certainly that heart is still framed which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and hairs stand on end. Report by Srila Prabhupada. We should know with profit that in the first 3 chapters of the second canto, a gradual process of development of devotional service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in his universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as a supersoul in every heart and everywhere, in every atom of the material universe. The system of Pancha Upasana, recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man, is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal supersoul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They are all nicely described in the second chapter, but in the third chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. And the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested herein in relation to the change of heart. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So with the progress of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment, by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vedi Bhakti, or regulated devotional service by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands, and the legs, as already explained herein before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel-framed, for it is not melted even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties. And if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences these are the natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of Godhead. If a reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reactions or feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally, trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating the above symptoms for cheap appreciation. Not only Vishwanath Chakrabarti, but also Srila Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotees, Prakrita Sahajas. But the pseudo symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo devotees addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. And for this reason, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. When Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda Rai of Kagom on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms. But because of the presence of some non-devotee brahmanas who were attendants of the Raya, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they are not visible even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, shanti, utilization of every moment in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, avyarta, kalatvam, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly, nama gane sada ruchi, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, priti tav basati stali, complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness, mana sunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava state, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious, so much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. As such, even if they make a constant show, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental taste of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in the eyes, trembling, perspiration, unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with the pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits. Otherwise, they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return path home back to Godhead will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. Oma Ganati Virandesa, Gana Gana Shalakaya, Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantika. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Peshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatyarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Shari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So the English translation of the text again. Certainly that heart is still framed, which, in spite of once chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place, tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on end. Hare Krishna. So, in many ways, this text is describing stone-heartedness, steel-heartedness in some people in connection with the chanting of the holy name. Hard-heartedness. Sometimes gurus explain the heart becomes hard like that. And there are a number of things that contribute to it. So Sukadeva Goswami is saying that a heart is not soft. It's steel framed. You can't get into it. They are basically heartless, as we call it here in this country. A heart is that way if, in spite of chanting the holy name of the Lord and even being focused in doing it, the heart doesn't change when signs of transformation like tears in the eyes, ecstatic standing of hairs on end take place. So definitely these are signs of a person getting into the holy name, becoming aware of the fact that they are servant of the Lord. When at the time they're chanting, these symptoms naturally begin to come out. Srila Prabhupada has discussed people who imitate that, but we're talking about natural people. It is really rare for the heart to be hearted like that, be hard like that. If in chanting with concentration, and with these ecstasies, these different signs of getting into very focused chanting, these signs are there, and still the heart is steel framed, as it's been described. But before we get to that, Srila Prabhupada and the purport went back on the Srimad Bhagavatam's description of the first 3 chapters of the second canto. And also the first, breaking it down, first chapter, second chapter, and third chapter. So he's mentioning that the first step, the first step in devotional service is by the process of hearing and chanting. And that's described in the first chapter. The process of hearing and chanting is the basic thing. And it is through hearing and chanting, especially hearing, that one becomes convinced about the need for Krishna consciousness in one's life. And therefore, the chanting is taken up seriously. I know that when a person comes to Krishna consciousness after having lived a non-devotee life for whatever number of years, they were not born directly in the movement, it involves a change of lifestyle. Even time has to be adjusted. Because if a person decides to chant, voluntarily decides to chant 16 rounds of japa, that will take at least an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half that they were not chanting before. An hour and a half of the daytime has to be adjusted so that chanting can take place. It takes a person who is serious about wanting to be Krishna conscious to make that decision. But that decision of chanting and taking that time off to chant, some people it takes them 2 hours, some people a little more than that. It comes from being convinced through the process of hearing that Krishna, Stu, Bhagavan, Swayam. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. As Lord Brahma says in Brahma Samhita, his compilation. And we also hear about devotional service. And Bhagavad Gita says, Bhakti Amam Abhijanati. I can be known only through devotional service. So you find out God can be known through devotional service, and it starts with the process of hearing and chanting. So that's what I have to do if I have to know about God, because everywhere else I've been, nobody knows God. At best, we talk about his messenger, which is in Islam. They talk about his son, which is in Christianity, but nobody knows who he is. You come to Krishna consciousness and find out who he is, and he says, you're going to know about me through the process of devotional service. So we take devotional service seriously. What's devotional service? Well, there are 9 processes, but it starts with hearing and chanting. So the Prabhupada said, chanting is the most important thing, but hearing is the first thing. So we have to hear and hear and hear. Well, that involves hearing audio that's already been there, or hearing live that is happening now, or reading. They are all in the Shravan, the hearing section. Then the Kirtan, chanting of the holy name. That can be in japa without beads, or japa without the beads, or kirtan, fast chanting of the holy name in song, or bhajan, slow chanting of the holy name in song, in music. All of that comes under the chanting. And it is also the Yuga Dharma, what is supposed to be done in this Kali Yuga. Anything that we do, we have to, in devotional service, has to be done along with chanting. Chanting cannot be eliminated in a process of devotional service. And the chanting itself, the Hare Krishna mantra says, dear Radha, dear Krishna, please engage me in devotional service to you. So the hearing tells us what to do and what not to do. And the chanting is a plea, it's a prayer to the Lord to engage us in devotional service. Therefore, we must perform devotional service at home, and especially in the temple, where the business of Krishna consciousness is all that is done. So Srila Prabhupada says that in the first chapter of the second canto, devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting, that's been emphasized. And then mercy is extended to beginners by looking at the personality of Godhead in the universal form. From his feet all the way up to the skull, literally, being represented as Brahmaloka. And then the different parts, like the trees representing the hairs on his body and so on. So those who don't know God and they're not ready to see God in his personal form, start with things that are known in the material world, the planets. And by that, we get to know some sense of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is a start to get us to finally begin to spiritualize the mind and the senses, because now we're connecting the Lord's form to the planets. We're not quite there yet, but at least we are getting some form of the Lord. And it allows the person to concentrate the mind on Lord Vishnu. And then we also hear that an expansion of the Lord is the super soul and is in every heart and every atom of the material universe. So literally, slowly and slowly and slowly, Srila Prabhupada brings up the 5 mental attitudes. Gradual development is the first one. He has said so many times, gradually we will become more and more Krishna conscious. That's why the word purification is used. We become better people. The more we hear, the more we get convinced, the more our eyes get open, the more we say so many aha, aha, oh, it's like this. And slowly we begin to understand. And life itself begins to prove to us. So by this gradual development, you get to the point where you're beginning to see that Krishna is there at every step in our lives in the form of a super soul, giving guidance, giving directions to the intelligent. This is the person who's turned the attention now. Slow development. And even that point, it's not reached yet of accepting the Supreme Personality in the personal form. So they may be worshiping fire, electricity, sun, Lord Shiva, and then go to the impersonal, super soul. Well, even the effulgence of the Lord, and then super soul, as the yogis do, meditate, trying to find the partial representation of the Lord as a super soul. So that's all described in this second chapter. Then in the third chapter of this canto, then we are pulled into the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. Anya Bilasita Sunyam. When one begins to serve the Lord, not expecting any payback, not expecting any favors, they are already beginning to understand what pure devotional service is about. Even if we still have things that are a little bit there in the lower nature that have to be overcome. But the person, one, is enthusiastic about serving. Two, they don't ask for anything for the service. When we love somebody, we do things for them, and we don't ask to be paid by them. Only employer-employee relationship involves paying for the work that's done. So when devotional service is done without wanting anything in return, that is one of the aspects of pure devotional service. And the heart begins to open up then. This is the mature stage of Vishnu worship. That is the place where, when the person gets there to that level, the change of heart takes place. And the change of heart, this is a spiritual culture. Srila Prabhupada says this is the aim. Changing the heart of a devotee from being changing the heart of a person from being a non-devotee connected with material enjoyment to giving the heart to Krishna, staying away from material enjoyment. Understanding that the Lord is supreme and we are his subordinate servants. And that's our internal constitutional position. So the idea of lording it over the world, how to just be powerful and so on, those get put to the side. And even if it happens by some, not even so much endeavor by the person, but it comes anyway, they give it all. Whatever comes from it, they give it all to the Lord. The proceeds for it are given to the Lord. And the fame is also explained by the person that it is the mercy of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada said it many times, to have us understand the importance of the parampara. Anytime he was praised about anything, he said, it is the mercy of my Guru. It is the mercy of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. And he doesn't say it just to say it, just to show humility. He means it. And the proof is not difficult to express. He was successful. He was in India. Who told him to come to the West? Who told him twice to come to the West? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. So another way of looking at it is, had Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj not told Srila Prabhupada to come to the West, Krishna consciousness won't be here, not at least through him. It may have been to somebody else. But it's the spiritual master that told him to come. The spiritual master that also told you the power part. When you get money, print books. That's why we have books all over the place. Millions, hundreds of millions of books are now distributed all over the world, and people are beginning to get a sense, even if they don't come to our temples, they know something about Krishna. First time they really know who God is. You can't get it in any religion, but if you come to Krishna consciousness, you get to know who God is. Mm-hmm. That alone is such a boon for us. So we also begin to understand, okay, this is a false sense to lord it over the material world. It's a false ego thing. Mm-hmm. Give it up and increase the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Loving service means we're doing it from our heart. We don't want anything from it as pay. So regulated devotional service. We start. We use our body parts, eyes, nose, ears, hands, legs, these senses with a mind focused in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this way of looking at Krishna consciousness and delving into it, mind and body, would eventually cause a change of heart. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is expressing and also translating this text that if there's no such change after a person getting that far, then that person must be considered to have a heart that is framed with steel. Now, further down the purport, Srila Prabhupada doesn't look at devotees that way. He looks at imitators. There are signs of devotional service, reactions, like their eyes being teary and the hair standing on end of the body. So Papa says they are consequences of the preliminary symptoms in the bhava stage. The bhava stage is the stage that one gets to when they're very steady in Krishna consciousness. And then from there, we start the prema stage. Krishna prema, love of Godhead. So some people imitate that to get attention, to make people think that they are so high in the whole level of Krishna consciousness development. So for devotees, though, when person chants steadily and they hear continuously about Krishna, and this reaction of the heart melting does not take place, the only reason is offenses. My Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Maharaj described that the sign of an advanced devotee, one of the big signs of an advanced devotee, is that they're very careful not to offend. They're very careful not to offend, not to let a person be angry, upset, sad, all of those negative emotions. And if anything could contribute to that in their speech, they will warn first that I'm about to say something that may be a little challenging or maybe a little negative. They will have their own way of expressing it, and then they talk about it so that the person that's hearing will be alert to the fact that there will be some things that may be challenging to their own way of conceiving things that's going to be coming from the mouth of this person. So they just warned you ahead of time. I don't mean to be, and then they say, I don't mean to be so and so and so, but then they may say those things so that it is said, but it is said with caution. I don't mean to offend, but so and so and so and so happens. Or they will say something, they say, I've heard that it is this way. So it's not from them, they're just quoting where they heard it from, or they heard some reference, they give a reference. So even if it's contrary to the person's opinion, the person that's listening opinion, the whole thing has been presented in such a way that the person that's speaking is not going to get blamed. And that way, the person that's speaking doesn't cause any offenses. It is critical that we learn how not to commit offenses. Sometimes it gets to a point where you just have to keep quiet. In your mind, you want to just lash out at the person, but hold off and say, no, but I'm going to cause a problem to this person if I do that. Then hold off. I've been around some devotees, one of them, godfather of mine, I remember very well, this was in Gitanagri. I talked about some things I was uncomfortable with. He did not have a way of kind of responding to it. And I was just shocked to see how his reaction was. He was dead silent. He didn't say a word. And that was enough. That was enough for me to realize he's answered it. And the answer is, you're criticizing the person. And that's not the right thing to do. He didn't say it. He just kept quiet. And I learned from it. This was years back, almost 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we're all going through the process of purification. Mm-hmm. So Srila Prabhupada says, if we are chanting steadily, if we're not chanting steadily, we are already in the offensive state. So it's offenses. Mm-hmm. Again, the clearing stage is when we're chanting steadily, but the heart hasn't opened up as much. Mm-hmm. That's the clearing stage, the second stage. And the last stage is just when we're just absolutely in love with the holy name and it's coming out of our mouth and there's this just and then tears and so on. Mm-hmm. Some devotees go through that, but they will not tell you. You have to be very, very, very like really close to them and sharing information for them to actually even say that it's happened to them. But it's happened to quite a few devotees and it will happen to everybody. That is not hard-hearted. That is not commit offenses to devotees. Mm-hmm. So we have to avoid these 10 kinds of offenses. And as a matter of fact, it's a good idea to remind ourselves about the 10 kinds of offenses before we start chanting. So there are 10 offenses which go against the chanting of the holy name. One, we'll go through it quickly. Blaspheming devotees, offending devotees, making devotees feel uncared for. Mm-hmm. Second, to put the demigods at the level of Lord Vishnu. The demigods depend on Lord Vishnu. And for the 10 offenses, they particularly cite Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, the topmost demigods. So with them, they are not at the level of Lord Vishnu. And if they're not at a level, but they're higher than all the demigods, then the rest of the demigods are not at the level of Lord Vishnu. We shouldn't make that mistake. And that's what worries me sometimes, because I have seen in some of the Hindu temples that you go, one, not far from where we are, that has Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, very, very, very nicely honored on the altar. Then there are pictures on the walls of demigods. And the demigods, that picture, that area is where Radha and Krishna are. This is the second offense. Putting Krishna at the level of demigods. 3, the orders of the spiritual master must be obeyed at all times. Now, orders means suggestions, direct orders, opinions, they all should be obeyed. The spiritual master is a representative of Krishna. So if he says something, you should take it and I should take it like Krishna has told me something to do. Now, we all know that if Krishna was in front of us and says, Krishna himself, he says, do such and such and such, we would not hesitate to do it. That should be the attitude of spiritual master towards spiritual master's requests, opinions, direct orders, suggestions. They should all be taken to the same category. We should not disobey the orders of the spiritual master. Next is the literature, Vedas, and all the others that are even at the religious level, but point to God, at least get people up to the mode of goodness. The different religions, we should not blaspheme those. The Hare Krishna mantra, it should not be taken as imagination. And we shouldn't give our own interpretation to the Hare Krishna mantra, the names of the Lord. And after that, there are also a few more we'll add, and we'll try to go through that also quickly. We shouldn't commit sinful activities and say, I'm going to chant Hare Krishna, and it's very, very powerful, therefore my offenses will be forgiven. Or sinful activities will be forgiven. So Papa said that's the greatest kind of offense to the holy name. We shouldn't look at Hare Krishna mantra as another type of ritual. We just cite it in a ritualistic kind of mood that we're going to get some material boons from it. In other words, we should have this karmakandic type mentality, fruitive activities. Then we should also be very careful, this ninth offense, to preach about the glories of the holy name to somebody who is a non-believer. Now, how do we know that? Well, we talk to people, we try to sell them books and so on. So some people don't believe in God. We don't know. They don't wear badges. We can't distinguish them from others who may be open to Krishna consciousness. So how do we know? When we start talking to them and they get very turned off, then we know this person doesn't want anything, or they say something very negative against God. Some people are saying, oh, the problems in the world today are because of people believing in God. And they said they cite the proof as, see, all of these religious wars, they take the holy book and the holy book saying, oh, this part of the holy book means so and so and so and so. This is what it's saying. Therefore, I get to attack these other people in religion. Actually, Srila Prabhupada deals with the whole thing by saying, gold is gold. There is no Hindu gold. There is no Christian gold. There is no Muslim gold. Gold is gold. There cannot be a different type of gold, or there can be a situation where a Muslim takes a gold to a place where Hindus are, and Hindus won't accept it just because a Muslim person brought it. Gold is gold. And he is relating gold to religion. There's one religion. That's why Sri Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 18, chapter 18, text 66, abandon all varieties of religion. Surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the eternal religion. So the last of the 10 offenses is to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and maintain material attachments. Even though you hear so many times, get away from material attachments, get away from material attachments, we still are attached to material things. Materialism is what keeps us in the material world. Materialism keeps us in the material world. That's what we want. That's where we're going to be, because that's where it is. If that's what we want, we have to stay in the material world to get that. But the material world also offers miseries, a lot of miseries. That is not worth it after you grow in Krishna consciousness for a while. It's not worth it for whatever material enjoyment we say we get, to compare that to the difficulties that happen in this world from our own minds, from other people and other living entities, and from the weather. It's no place to stay. When we begin to understand that Krishna is very merciful, but this place that we're in is jail, and he's asking us to do what it takes to leave the jail, to go back home, to have eternal enjoyment no death, no old age, no disease. Hmm? That is the best thing that could be told to anybody. So we have to avoid these 10 kinds of offenses. So it's good to know them and then say them and then begin to chant. Hmm? So there is the Baba stage that Srila Prabhupada mentioned. And here are some of the symptoms in the Baba stage: inertness, perspiration, standing of the hairs on end, the voice being a little choked, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and then trance. So a person that exhibits some of these genuinely may well be in the Baba stage, the stage just before um, prema. And Srila Prabhupada has talked about the fact that some Prakriti Sahajas that want attention, they imitate, they know they've read all of these, so they just imitate it, and people think, oh, he's in such a wonderful Baba stage. But you can find out who they are because they are fake. And how we know is what their habits are after they make their show, which is smoking, drinking, illicit sex. So these are not people in the real Baba stage. They're not. So those are the ways in which we can tell. And another point that's important is actually, before we even leave the Baba stage, Shiv Baba says real steady Baba is displayed in cessation of material desires. Cessation of material desires, that's one of the things that a person in the Baba stage definitely is at. They're not interested in anything, including money. You don't go out of their way up to this, like, so passionate going after money, like the way a lot of people do here. And there's so many advertisements now. If you want to make so many hundreds of thousands of dollars, here's a way to do it over and over and over and over again, as if that brings real happiness. Money buys things. Money cannot buy happiness. I have seen people with wonderful, expensive cars, and they're driving. One woman I saw driving a very, very expensive, nice-looking Mercedes Benz, and she was crying. I pulled up next to her on the highway. Those who in Harrisburg, they know it's 83. 83 South. This is two. At that time, it's been renovated now, but at that time, it was just two lanes. And I was on one side, just from 81, just got on 83 South. And the thought came, look at this person. I turned and looked, and she was just crying all over the place and trying to drive too. And I'm thinking, if he's driving a Mercedes Benz, he's probably well off financially. But something else happens that would make people emotionally down. So money can't buy any of this. In fact, the more money, we have to be very careful not to get into sense gratification. But what the devotee should do with money is, first of all, to make money, to want to make money, you have to have something to do for Krishna first. And go after that. And if that particular project involves so many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, then you're talking about trying to raise it because you want to spread, excuse me, Krishna consciousness. Because other than that, what are you going to do with money? You have to have enough to keep a roof over your head, food on the table, and so on, get your bills paid. But the rest of it, if you're getting the sense gratification, you're not going back to Godhead. So the money becomes sabotage. So there has to be a project in Krishna consciousness that you want to accomplish. Then you go after how to raise the Lakshmi for it. And if you already have some from inheritance or something that's happened, karma, good karma, then give and give and give and give to your temple and to Krishna consciousness projects, because that is how we're going to be disconnected. If you can give away material things, it's easier to disconnect from the material things, and we have to disconnect from materialism in order to go back to Godhead. And as grihastas especially, this is our duty. To give in charity. So real Baba is displayed by ceasing connection with material desires. Every moment you try to use it in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, even if just you have to hear about Krishna. We should be eager to glorify the Lord constantly. And how do you glorify the Lord? Talk about the Lord's pastimes, or just simply sing the holy name, Kirtan Bhajan, slow or fast. So we have to have great relish for the holy name. We should be inclined to hear the Hare Krishna mantra constantly. Any tune that comes to your head from Kami life that you remember, just begin to sing it with the words of the Hare Krishna mantra. Change it immediately. And that way you're hearing the mantra the whole time. Material happiness always has trouble attached to it. We have to have complete detachment. And then we should be prideless. So these are the symptoms. The person that develops all of this transcendental qualities is at the Baba stage. And that's distinguished from a stone-hearted imitator or a mundane devotee. So the process is this: advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in an offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. Now, Srila Prabhupada is stressing here, is friendly to everyone, not only respectful to seniors, but friendly to everyone. Everyone. That person can relish the transcendental taste of chanting the holy name and glorifying the Lord. So there are some people that are trying to jump the gun. Neophyte trying, I've heard about, at some point that my Siddha Swarup will be revealed to me. My form in the spiritual world will be revealed to me. And I remember one particular devotee, he's actually in Maryland, came to Gitanagari to give a series of lectures. And he brought this point up that some devotees are trying to give other devotees the impression that they are advanced and they know what their Siddha Swarup is, their form in the spiritual world. And there was one particular devotee that was behaving in a strange way according to the way other devotees saw him. And they asked, why are you doing what you're doing? And he said that I found out that my Siddha Swarup, my form in the spiritual world, is a peacock. So I'm trying to practice how to be a peacock while I'm in the material world. As this devotee that described it, he said he's trying to practice his peacockness. Of course, there's no word like that, but he made up, imitating the movements of the peacock. The real deal is this: Siddha Swarup, the form in the spiritual world, everybody has a form, original form, even though we can change to other forms too, depending on the pastime that's supposed to happen. That's there. But Siddha Swarup, by the spiritual master's mercy, one that is taking Krishna consciousness seriously can get to know it. But it is important that it never gets revealed to anyone. Therefore, there will be some devotees that know their Siddha Swarup in the spiritual world, and many devotees that don't know, and it doesn't matter, because those who know, they won't tell you. It's never to be revealed to anyone. And the second point is, Srila Prabhupada never stressed the need to know about it anyway. He didn't. So it's not important that you get to know who you were in the spiritual world before you go back to the spiritual world. There's so many intricacies. Even when a person is going back to the spiritual world, what is done first, all the way down to what they want to wear, and all those things are there. Hmm? But they're not important to us, the chanting. We have to focus on the main thing: hearing, chanting, serving, and having a good attitude to everybody, not being offensive. That's more important. Whatever our form is, we'll find out. That's not important, in our quest to become better devotees. So hard-heartedness happens when devotees are offensive. The imitators, yes, they may be there. See, Papa spent time talking about those. Mhm. If they connect with a realized devotee, then yeah, they can get cleaned up. But we are already connected with self-realized devotees. The whole parampara is like that. And the only way in which you get hard-hearted is offenses. So we have to be careful to stay away from those. So much Srila Prabhupada has given us, and this is a long purport, and so many things. If you can go back to it and read it anytime you want. So the final, I'm just going to go over the English translation again, which says that the heart, certainly that heart is steel framed, which inspired of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change, even when the signs of transformation, such as tears in the eyes, ecstatic standing of heads on the end, occur. And for devotees, especially, offenses that's going to kill us like that. Shira Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much for coming to hear. And this is the time when we unmute ourselves and share, take part in Krishna Katha, realizations, questions, connecting the dots, takeaways. Hare Krishna. So even if you feel inclined to do that, please unmute yourself now. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, all to
That's my
Prabhupada.
glory to Srila Prabhupada.
As you were reading the purport, I said to myself, gotta go back and read each and every line. Because it was pretty powerful what Prabhupada said in the purport, about cleansing our minds and hearts, about offenses, the right Krishna conscious mood, devotional service, the hearing, the chanting. Like he gave so many instructions in that one purport that I would like to share, that I have to go back and read each line and really meditate on it because it's so powerful. And as Chandramali Swami said, that the second canto is the smallest canto, but it's very, very, very powerful, he said. So that was my takeaway, is going back to read the purport again, because it's a lot of stuff. And because sometimes we hear, we forget, because the mind is, such a rascal, that we have to hear again and again and again, because the mind we will forget. I mean, and as Kali Yuga progresses, the mind will begin to forget even more. So, because as quicker as the mind forgets, to that degree, we have to hear and be reminded of. So thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm glad you stressed the last point about having to hear over and over and over and over again. It helps us to remember, but it also, hearing over and over and over again, has a second, even more important result. And that is, it makes us more convinced. It makes us more convinced about Krishna consciousness. That is a process that takes us out of this material world. It makes us convinced that the material world is jail. Because when we hear, the more we hear, the more different examples prove that point, that we are not home. And if we're not home, we have to get home. And home is the place that we will be happiest. Trying to get happy in this material world just doesn't cut it. But many people will look at the things that are available, especially in this country, the United States. So many material things are here. They say, oh, I just have to do such and such and such and such. The opportunity is there. I'm going to live the American dream. Well, it is a dream, all right, because it's not reality. Reality is the spiritual world. So now we know, and we have to prepare to be on that royal path and get as many people convinced also. And you hear over and over and over and over again, you realize, yes, I have to disconnect from material energy. It's not going to make me happy. Every time it gives some sort of happiness, there's some distress that's attached to it. This is not, I want good, clean happiness. Sudha Sattva. Clean goodness with no passion, no ignorance. And that is how it's practiced in the spiritual world. There's so much love. And they're waiting for us. Even those in Brahmaloka are waiting for us. They are some of the cleanest people spiritually in the universe. And Srila Prabhupada says many people come from Brahmaloka to different religions to try to help them. And the religions call them messiahs. So therefore, the Jewish people are waiting for their messiah. Christians have their messiah already, and Muslims talked about the Mahdi coming. All of those are residents of Brahmaloka that come down to the different planets to help. Like that, we explained it that way. Any other suggestions, questions? If not, then thank you very much for allowing me to give this particular service of preaching. And this is the weekend, so have a nice Krishna conscious weekend. And those of you who are close to us in this area, hopefully you'll come to the temple on Sunday. We do have Bhakti Vasudev Swami coming to give class this Sunday evening. So please come on time. Very important to come on time because he'll start on time and it will be a little bit embarrassing that people will come in later. So there's a lot to share. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
This time.
Hare Krishna. Jai.